Welcome to myhistorylives.com. This upcoming biography was shared by Grethal Nass to her son, James Nass, on January 16, 2019.
Or when were you born?
January 22nd, 1935.
And where were you born?
Kansas City, Missouri.
And do you have any memories of growing up in Kansas City?
Well, I lived in Kansas City. I was living with my father and my stepmother in Kansas City. And
what was your stepmother's name?
Ivella.
And your dad's name?
Ralph Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember anything before I was 4 years old, but I think that's just a normal thing. When I started going to school, and we always had oatmeal for breakfast every morning, and I hated oatmeal, and I do to this day. But I couldn't get up from the table until I had eaten. Oh, I used to just sit there and stare at it and until it got lukewarm, maybe kind of cold. And I used to stare at it so long I thought I could see worms crawling, around in the oatmeal. So I gagged on every bite, but anyway. And then my dad wasn't always home. He was a truck driver, so. My mother used to come over and visit us, and I thought she was so beautiful, and I really loved her. But then she came and got us. I was 7 years old. So we moved to Denver, Colorado, and we moved into my grandparents' home, my mother's parents. It was in South Denver. It was on South Bannock Street, and we were right close to Gates Rubber Company. And we were just probably a few blocks east, maybe 3 blocks east of Santa Fe Drive, and we ran along where the Platte River was. My dad,
Any memories of him?
He was a good dad, I think. I don't remember him real well. Because like I said, he was a truck driver, and he was gone a lot. But he was a good dad. I mean, while we were there. Oh, she was a great mom, and she was hardworking. And I remember she worked at a place called the Armistice Plant, I think, or something like that.
Back then?
Remington Arms, yeah, probably.
That was it?
It was out east, I think. In east, kind of like northeast Denver.
Oh.
She went to work every day, except weekends, and then Saturdays was always our day to do laundry. And I don't think I didn't feel like my grandparents really cared that much about us. Of course, it's probably hard to have my 2 sisters. Arlene was the oldest, Shirley was the middle, and I was the youngest. And so I'm sure for my grandparents it was a little bit difficult to have young kids around at their age. One time, I remember Shirley and I, we didn't want to go to school. We hated the thought of going to school, because we didn't know anybody. And my grandfather, when it was time for us to go to school, our first day, he stayed about a block behind us and walked down to make sure we went to school.
Sure. How long did you have your grandmother in your life?
I don't think she was in it very long, because I remember she died. I think she had cancer.
How old were you, do you think, when she died? 10, 11? What do you think, if you remember?
Maybe around maybe around 10, maybe a little younger. I really don't remember. I don't remember her that well. I have a picture of her in my mind. I remember, I have a hard time remembering. And she may have died when I was sooner than I think, because I really don't remember her that well. I just remember.
And so after she passed away, you lived there with your grandfather?
Lived there, yeah. We lived with my grandfather.
Was he a tough man? Was he a disciplinarian?
He was just kind of, he wasn't a disciplinarian, I don't think. I mean, he just wasn't he wasn't an overly
outgoing,
friendly person, and I didn't think he liked us.
Right.
And they had 2 bedrooms upstairs, and so and when you had to go in, there was a doorway that opened up in this little hallway, and then you had to go up the stairs to our bedrooms. And my mother slept in one, and my sisters and I slept in the other one. In fact, all 3 of us slept in one bed. But it was always dark when you'd go in that door to go upstairs. It was very dark, and I was always scared. And one night I was home. I was the only one home with my grandfather. And I was scared. I didn't want to have to go up those stairs, but I knew I'd have to. My grandfather, I think he knew I was scared. So, and he always went to bed early. And so he stayed up and played cards with me until about 10 o'clock, which was really late for him. But I was so sleepy by then that I was glad to go up and go to bed. And I felt like he stayed up late and played cards with me because he knew I was afraid to go up those stairs by myself. And I thought, well, maybe he does like me, because I felt like he stayed up with me because he knew that I was afraid to go up by myself.
You were telling me about your dog, Butch. Tell me how you found him, how you came about.
Well, he was
some good stories.
He was a stray dog, and he was just in our backyard one day. And then, so I liked him. I love dogs, and so I really liked him, and so he just kind of hung around and stayed with me, but my grandfather would not let me keep him there because he didn't feel like the city was a place for dogs. So the lady across the alley, Mrs. Smith, who had 2 sons.
Did they have any dogs?
They had dogs.
They did, okay.
Cook and Duke were their names. That was nicknames.
But they had their sons. Cook and Duke were her sons?
Yes. And they had a dog. He was a brown dog, and he was a nice dog. And then she had a dog, a house dog.
A little dog, huh?
Yeah, and so she said she would keep Butch for me. And of course, her dog was in the house all the time.
Sure.
And she would feed him, and if he needed to go to the vet, she would take him.
All at her own expense.
And pay for it, yes.
Yeah, very nice.
She was a very, very nice lady, and she told me once that she wished she'd always wanted a daughter. So she said she wished I was her daughter.
Oh, nice.
And so, but she was a very sweet lady. And I think they had money, because they had a big house.
Okay.
And it was on a big lot. They had a lot of room. There was a grocery store. It was a small store. They didn't have the big supermarkets back then, and it was a small store down on Santa Fe. And so when I would go to the store, he would go with me, and he would stay outside and wait for me. And across Santa Fe was the Platte River, and I noticed a lot of times he was kind of wet when I would come out. So I felt like he went over and got in the water, in the river. And one time I came out and he was gone. And so I thought he went home. So I went home, and then later on that day, one of my friends came and told me that Butch was outside the store. So I went down there, and then when he saw me, then he got up and came home with me, and so I figured he'd been over in the river when I came out, and he didn't know I'd come out of the store yet. So, and then my mother had some friends that owned a gas station, and so they let me put up a Kool-Aid stand and sell Kool-Aid to the customers. And a man came in once, and of course Butch was with me, and so he really liked Butch, and he said he had two little girls that he thought they'd really like to have a dog like that, and would I be willing to sell him for $3? And I didn't want to, but my mother said I should, because Mrs. Smith, it wasn't fair to her to have to take care of him all the time. So I did. I sold him for $3. Anyway, and this man lived quite a ways from where we lived. And I think he lived over around Hampton Boulevard.
Oh, okay.
And you figure, because
you're quite a ways.
Yeah.
Especially for a dog.
So anyway, the next morning I got up, and Butch was in the backyard, and he had a rope around his neck, and and so I thought, so I got, I kept him, and this man came into the gas station one day, and so they asked him, well, don't you want to get your dog back or the $3? And he said, no, when a dog and a little girl care that much about each other, they belong together. So I don't want the dog, and I don't want my $3 back. I think I was a happy child.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole neighborhood was full of kids, so we were always playing, and even after dinner, we'd run out inside and we'd play during the summer months especially. And it was a great neighborhood. We used to play, there was a vacant lot across from us, and so we'd all go over there and we'd play softball. But that's about, and no, I wasn't a great athlete or anything, but just enjoyed playing games. And
sure,
I liked school. I went to McKinley Elementary School, and I think it was what grade was I in? I think it was second grade, and I had this teacher. Her name was Mrs. Boobolts, and she was really pretty, and I really liked her. And then I remember in sixth grade, I didn't like my teacher. I thought she was grouchy. I can't remember her name. But in sixth grade, the kids in sixth grade got to be in the color guard, to raise the flag every morning,
mm-hmm.
and then take it down when school was out. And I think there's five of us, five in the color guard. And what they did, they took turns. One week, one group would do it, and they just would change. And So we'd always, when I was in the color guard, I always got out of school 5 minutes early because it got to, to take down the flag.
Mm-hmm.
And I already thought that was neat that I got to get out 5 minutes early. And we had to be very careful of the flag. It could not touch the ground.
Yeah.
And of course, if it was bad weather, we never
put it out.
Put the flag out. And then from McKinley, when I got out of 6th grade, I went to Grant Junior High, which was, and it only had 2 grades. It had 8th. It had 7th and 8th grades.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I liked this. And when I was in 6th grade, I liked this boy named Richard Avery. But he didn't like me. But anyway, and then when I went to junior high, and I liked junior high, and I used to sing a lot, and I remember we had a school, an all school show, and we had a minstrel show, and because I could sing and stuff, I was the mistress of ceremonies.
You were like the star.
Yes, and so yeah, I used to sing a lot. And then I liked a boy in 7th grade too. His name was Robert. I don't remember his last name, but he didn't like me either. So. And then when I got out of 8th grade, I went to West High School, which had a 9th grade, which at that time was the only high school that had a 9th grade. And so I had a lot of friends in high school, but I forgot to mention that we moved away from my grandparents' home, and I can't remember how old I was. I must have been probably in junior high or something, and because my uncle, which was my mother's brother, Dick Owings, Richard Owings, and they were living in Seattle, Washington when we came to stay with my grandparents, and then his job was moving him back here, and because he was my grandfather's son, my grandfather wanted him and his family to move in to their house.
So that was why you had to move, because your Uncle Dick and his family were coming and going to live there?
And we had to move. And we lived in several different places. I can't remember all the places where we lived.
But you stayed the same high school the whole time?
Yes. We moved. We finally... we moved we lived in several different places. We used to live on Quitman Street, just off of 6th Avenue. And we lived in, I can't think of what it was called. It was on Federal Boulevard. It had a few apartments, and then it also had people who lived in trailers there.
Oh.
And yes, I didn't. Yeah, when I left Grant Junior High, because we moved over there on Federal, and I went to Barnum High School.
Oh.
Barnum,
Junior.
and there they started out. It was an elementary school, but it ran through the 8th grade. So I finished my 8th grade at Barnum High, and then I went to West High School. And we moved out east right off York, but I continued going to West High.
How did you get to school? Did you drive?
I rode the bus.
Okay.
Rode the bus to school every day, and then when I wasn't. I had a lot of friends, and I had one special good friend. Her name was Lois Cox, and West High was a tough school. I mean, it was a school where even girls fought.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I wasn't a fighter, but Lois Cox, my best friend, she was one of the toughest girls in the school, and she made it known that nobody bothered me, So it was good to have someone like that as your friend.
Absolutely, for sure.
My mother got cancer. I remember I was 14 when she went into the hospital. They were going to do surgery.
So you weren't living with your grandparents at that time. You were living alone with your mom.
In fact, I think both of them
had passed.
Yeah.
Dick, and your Uncle Dick was living in that house.
Yes.
And did you were both your sisters with you at 14, living with your mom?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And it was when we lived on Quitman Street, and I remember her coming home from work one day. It was about 2 blocks from the bus stop, and she would ride the bus to work. And I remember her coming home one day and crying because her leg hurt her so bad. And so anyway... and
at that time she didn't know what the problem was?
No.
Her leg was very sore.
And so she went to the doctor, and they found she had cancer, and they were going to amputate her leg above the knee. And it's funny, I used to always think that she had bone cancer, but now when I think about it, I think she had melanoma, because she had a large mole on the inside of her ankle, about the size of a 50-cent piece. And I remember when she hated that. She thought it was ugly, and she went to a doctor, and he burned it off. And I remember hearing the doctor that she finally went to, I can't remember his name.
Cancer doctor?
Great doctor,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. He was a great doctor. And I remember hearing him say he should never have done that.
Oh.
And so now I think it was melanoma.
Wow.
And
you've had bouts with that now, right, or not?
Well, not melanoma.
Not melanoma, okay.
Skin.
Okay. So it's different then. All
skin
right.
cancer. Yeah, melanoma is bad,
Okay.
very bad. It's caused by moles and...
I see.
And anyway, so she did have her leg removed, her above the knee. And I remember I prayed to God not to let that happen. And when I got home from school, I called the hospital and I spoke to the nurse and asked her, and she said yes.
How old were you then, do you think?
Well, I was probably 14.
Still at that time, okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because, anyway. So I was very angry with God because I had asked him not to let that happen, but I did. But that's, that's a kid, you just...
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Anyway, so, but when she came home, and we moved out of that place on Quitman, and we lived over off of York Street, and I had to ride the bus every day to school, and she got an artificial leg, and so she was working in an office. She was a statistician, and she was working in an office downtown, and so she had to ride the bus downtown all the time. And she did great. A lot of people, they didn't realize she had an artificial leg.
Oh,
they
wow.
thought she walked with a limp,
Mm-hmm.
and they thought maybe she was crippled or something. But she did, and every day she went to work, and she'd come home, and she would always tell us what she was planning for dinner and for us to start dinner.
Before she got home.
Before she got home, and then she would finish it when she got home. I mean, and she was great being, having that artificial leg. I mean, it was just, she was really just amazing.
Yeah.
And then we lived in that. It was a basement apartment, but it was nice, and the people that lived upstairs, the owners, they were very nice to us, very nice. So then when I was, I don't know, maybe I was 15 or 16, probably. Anyway, her leg really, she started getting sick again. The cancer returned. I mean, they were hoping, were hoping that cutting off her leg like that would stop it, but it came back. And
do you think cutting off her leg helped her live longer?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think she lived 2 more years, and so.
Was most of that a good quality of life too? That 2 years. Once
yes,
it came back, was that a short time?
Except when she got sick again, and so she really couldn't work anymore.
So what did you guys do?
And she would stay and we put a bed. There was a bed in the living room, and then we had to give her. They called them hypos to stop ease the pain. Then they put her in, I guess, place that they call them hospice now. It was called Sands House, and it was over off of 26th Avenue and Sheridan. But anyway, so that's where they put her, and I don't remember Arlene during that time at all. But Shirley and I, because we still lived in that basement apartment over on York Street, so we would take the bus. In fact, we had to take 2 buses over to visit my mother at Sands House.
I see. How was she at that time when she was first there? Was she coherent and everything? And
well, okay. She was for a while, but after a while she didn't. I remember one time I went by myself over there, and I hung my coat on the door. She was in a room with somebody else, and I remember her telling me, "Take your coat off that door. You get bugs all over. Bugs will get all over your coat."
Oh, mm-hmm.
So anyway, it went that way, and then one day I was over at my friend's house, over at Lois Cox's house, and I guess Arlene, I don't remember Arlene being with us all that much, but she's the one that called me while I was over at Lois's to tell me that Mother died.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a shock to me. So then we had the funeral, and
you're how old at this time?
And I don't remember Arlene either then. I remember my Aunt Mina and her husband Bill, Uncle Bill, after the funeral, dropped Shirley and I off at
How old were you two at that time?
Well, I was 16.
So how old would Shirley have
Shirley
been?
was 18.
Okay.
And they dropped us off at that place where we lived in the basement, and went on their way. And Shirley and I had found another place to live because we couldn't stay in that one because we couldn't afford it. And so we found, it was kind of like a studio apartment where the couch made out into a bed and stuff. And we stayed there.
Sure, but after your, so you 16-year-old girl and an 18-year-old girl, sisters, living alone now. There, has been living alone actually quite a while because her mother was in hospice care.
Yeah.
How did you money? How did you pay rent? How was that?
My mother had a wonderful employer, and he continued paying her.
Oh wow! Okay.
At least that's what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
You didn't get any help from family or anything like that you remember?
No.
Okay.
No, we did not get any help at all from our family.
Okay.
So anyway, we moved to this place, and then we didn't have any money. We didn't have any food to eat. In fact, we went 3 days without eating. And Shirley had a job, and I was still going to school.
Right.
And so, but I don't think I went to school those 3 days because I hadn't eaten, or anything.
Yeah.
And Shirley went to work for, I think they were called Autry Brothers. And they're the ones that supplied the caps and gowns for the graduates and stuff. And Shirley worked there, and she worked there with one of her best friends, Joyce Davis. And I remember I was supposed to be getting money from Social Security for my mother. I was supposed to be getting like $35 a month. And so Shirley would tell me, now if that check comes, call me and let me know, and because so she could get it cash and we could have some food.
Right, exactly.
And the thing is, I don't remember ever getting that money. But when they got paid at
Autry Brothers?
Bob Davis, who was Joyce's husband. And so Bob Davis came over and gave me some money. And I only lived about a block from a drive-in restaurant. And, I remember I went over there, and I loved egg salad sandwiches. So they had great egg salad sandwiches and a malt. And that was my first meal for 3 days, Oh, I remember it was so good. And when I got out of school, I went to work. I can't remember exactly. Oh, yeah. We found another place to live, which was a great place. It was down on 9th in Pennsylvania, and it was a big old house. And all the houses along there were big old houses. But this house, they turned into a lot of bedrooms upstairs. And then they had what they called a community kitchen, and it was just for women, and the people that owned it lived next door in the house next door, and so they had a lot of bedrooms and then bathrooms, and of course we had to share the bathrooms with different people, but and I went to work for Gus's Bakery, which was out in South Denver on the other side of, it was in the western part, on the other side, on west of Broadway. And I worked nights, and so I had to take a bus. I had to take 2 buses to go to work, and then I had to walk 3 blocks to Gus's Bakery. But I was terrible. I mean, I was never one that could really sleep during the day. So I was always so tired when I would go to work. And I got fired after 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Mm-hmm.
And
how old were you? How old were you? Was this after you graduated?
I was probably 17, maybe 18.
You graduated high school already?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was a lady there that lived, one of the ladies that lived there in that house. She was probably in her 40s, and she and our landlady sat down and talked to me one day, and this lady said, of course, they didn't know I'd gotten fired, but they said, we have been talking, and you should not be working at a place like that. I mean, you're too young to be working down there. She said, well, this lady worked for the phone company.
Wow.
And she said, you come to the phone company and apply for a job there, which I did.
Yeah.
And I got it. And I was a long distance operator.
What a great job.
It was a great job. But, and I had all these, and I met this girl.
What was the name? Was that Mountain Bell at the time? Or
Yes,
it was
Mountain Bell.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I met this girl there. And so she used to go to East High. And so anyway, we became friends, and so I started running around with she and all her friends from East High, which I'd always hated East High.
Sure, they were your nemesis.
West,
West,
but anyway, so, and we had terrible hours. I'd work, well, it was kind of like split hours. You'd go to work at 9 and
9 a.m.
and 9 a.m. and you'd get off at 1, and then you'd come back at 5 or 6 and work until 10 o'clock. So I would, I did that for a long time. In fact, I was there almost a year, and of course all my friends would come and pick me up when I would get off work. And so I worked there almost a year, and then I quit because I wanted to be going out with my friends.
You wanted to party.
Stuff,
Yeah.
Anyway, then I think I went to work for a printing company, and I made staples, or I stapled pamphlets together. Anyway, when I had met this other friend through the girl that I was friends with from the phone company, and she was in that group. Well, she worked at Colorado General Hospital in the X-ray department, and she was going to get married. Her boyfriend had been in the Navy, and he got out, and they were going to get married, and he was going to go up to the school in Greeley because he was going to be a teacher. So she was going to quit her job at the hospital and move up to Greeley. So she told me I should go over there and talk to her boss and apply for her job, which I did, and yes, I got it. And it was a good job. I mean, I worked in the X-ray department.
Better hours than the phone company?
Yeah, day hours.
Weekends off?
Yeah. And it was a great job, and everybody was great. I enjoyed working there because...
now, was it Colorado General?
Yeah, which is now called the University of Colorado Med Center.
They were at 8th in Colorado at that time?
Yes.
Yes.
And it was a teaching hospital because so a lot of med students were there, and so I met the med students. I'd go out with med students, and there was this one guy. We were just really close friends. No romance or anything. Just really good friends, and he was such a neat guy. Whenever one of us didn't have anything to do, we'd call the other one, and stuff. And so we'd always do something together, Okay, I worked there 4 years.
4 years.
And so I was probably maybe 19.
When you started?
And it was a good job. And I worked there when I met Bernie. I worked at the hospital. Well, Mary and I knew this girl. I guess Mary worked with her. Her name was Nell, and she was married. And I can't remember her husband's name, but they had kids. And they had, but he worked with Bernie at
Admiral?
Admiral. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And so he bought, and then he brought Bernie home with him when we were over there. And because sometimes we would go over there, they had 2 twin boys. I think they had some girls too. And so every once in a while, Mary and I would, I think, babysit with the two little kids. And anyway, I can't remember Nell's husband's name. Anyway, and he brought Bernie home with him one night. And we all went bowling, and then I started dating Bernie. We had 3 sons, which James was the oldest, Christopher was the middle child, and then we had Kyle, was the youngest, and then we had a little girl, but she was stillborn.
She would have been the second born after me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. I was looking. I think she was born in January of 1960. So she and I would have been very close in age, about 13 months difference.
Yes. And Bernie was a great husband, a great dad, and he had great parents. I mean, they were just really special people, and they were so good to me. They treated me like I was one of their own, and stuff. And
let me ask you, talking about Dad, what do you love most about your spouse, about Dad?
Well, because he's a good man, and he's a good husband, and he's kind. Although he can be unkind at sometimes, but I don't mean to me. He's always, in fact, I remember even Arlene thought he was great, in fact, I forgot, we were talking to some people, and Arlene was telling this person what a great husband I had, and I said, yes, every woman wishes she had a husband like that.
Very nice. I've never heard that.
Yeah, I mean, because I used to hear about women being treated terrible by their husbands, or not really caring about them, and yet I think there isn't anything in the world that he wouldn't do for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's because I know he loves me dearly, and he's just always been so good.
Very good. Nice.
Even though he's not a namby-pamby. I mean, I know now they talk about, he's very he is. If you want to talk about masculine, he's masculine.
Oh yeah.
But he's a good masculine,
sure.
not, and I feel like really God blessed me with him. I think he gave Bernie to me, or helped us. I really think that it was God's plan for me to be with Bernie.
What is your passion in your life? If you had to name one thing that you're passionate about.
Well, I think right now, at my age and stuff, I think Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And my Heavenly Father. I just am very passionate about them. I feel like God gave us the greatest gift the world could ever receive, and that was His Son, Jesus Christ.
Right.
And I look back, and I know that God has watched over me all of my life.
Right.
And I feel like when my mother got sick and I was 14 and they cut off her leg, I think that God had her live 2 more years because knowing that Shirley and I were still young, and I was only 14 at the time.
Yes, right.
So I think he felt he gave her 2 more years,
right,
so that I could get to an age where I could take care of myself.
Yeah.
And Shirley, she would have been, and she was 18.
Was Jack a part of your life at that time? Shirley's my Uncle Jack?
Yes, Mother was alive when Shirley met Jack.
And so she knew Jack.
Yeah, and she really liked him. And he was he went into the Army. I think it was during the Korean War. And he had great parents, too. He was... Shirley and Jack got married, and then I was on my own then, but I was old enough, and so...
What's your favorite book? I think I know, but...
Well, a Bible, of course, but... I'm trying to think. I guess an author, I like mysteries, and so I like several. I can't remember his name.
Patterson?
Yeah. And also Mary
Higgins
Clark. She doesn't write that often, but I like hers. Well, when I was younger, I liked Dennis Morgan and Ginger Rogers, but that was
a
long time ago.
Your first car. Do you remember your first car, and what was it?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It was I think it was a 1951 Chevy. Jack and Shirley were married. In fact, Jack is the one that went with me to look at it.
Okay.
And in fact, I think I had it when Bernie and I got married. I think. I'm trying to think. But yes. In fact, I did, because it got stolen one. It got stolen.
If you could go back and live in another time, what year would it be? And if so, why?
Of course, I think the times now are really messed up. But so I guess maybe back in the 50s and 60s, I think.
Go back there again?
Yeah.
Okay. What are you proudest of?
Well, my family, I think.
Proudest of your family.
Yeah.
What is, if any, if you have one, what is your biggest regret?
Well, I wish I hadn't quit my job at the phone company.
There you go. That's true.
Because because they kept... I could have bought stock.
Oh, yeah, you could have been very well off. You could have retired from there, and oh, my goodness.
And because they'd call you off the board every once in a while and ask you if you would like to buy some stock in the company, and they would take payments out of my paycheck,
really low price.
But of course, then, hey, I wanted all of my money because I was a clothes horse. Yes, I wish I had never quit that job.
All right. If you could hold on to one memory, let's say that there's going to, that you find out you're going to lose every memory you have, except one. What would you want to hold on to? What memory would you cherish the most if you had to give everything up but the one?
Well, I think marrying Bernie, I think.
Okay. How would you like to be remembered?
Just being a good parent and a good person, a good Christian, yeah.
All right, last one. For your great-great-great-grandchildren listening or viewing this in years from now, is there any wisdom you want to pass on to them? What would you want them to know?
Well, I would want them to know Jesus Christ. That, I think, is the most important thing that anyone, if they think about it, that's knowing Him and knowing that if you know Him and if you have Him in your life, that through Him we can talk to God, to our Father, and about anything and anytime, anywhere. So I think knowing Jesus Christ is, and then through Him knowing that you can trust in God and that He does answer prayers. So I think that's the most important thing that everyone should know. And not hate. Don't hate, because I think hatred I think makes you do evil things or even have evil thoughts about whoever you hate. And so just try to be a good, decent person. I think that's, of course,
Yes.
I think that's probably what everyone wants
Very good.
their families to be, because it's, I don't think you're happy if you
Hold hate.
hate, because how can you hate and be happy?
Thank you for being a part of myhistorylives.com. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked what you saw, and would like a family member or a friend to have a life history video bio done, please call 720-613-8550, and we'll get you scheduled.